Good evening. Welcome to the Hammonton Joint Land Use Special Meeting for Wednesday, February 13th. Notice of this meeting has been posted and given to the local newspapers. Please familiarize yourself with the fire exits to the right and rear of the chambers. Please do not proceed beyond the front benches without an invitation to do so. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Ed Willerman,
Here.
Councilman Oliva, James Matro,
Here.
Michael Messina,
Here.
Michael Hozick,
Here.
Ralph Capaccio,
Here.
Jonathan Bask,
Here.
Chris Colani,
Here.
Chairman Olivo.
Here. So tonight's agenda is just a further discussion of the master plan, where I guess now we'll get into the land use plan element of the part, which is item 6 in our book of 200 and some pages. So we're at 132 at this point.
300.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I missed a few there. So I know last time we talked about if anybody had anything that they wanted to bring up as they look through it. But I'll let Stuart start off now if we could. And I think ideally we'll probably have to start going zone by zone as to some of the changes. Some of the zones didn't change. Some of them do have some changes in them. So I guess we're almost going to have to flip through it the best that we could.
So why don't we just start? If we can turn to page 132 in our hymnals. That's where the land use plan element starts. And the first number of pages, we talk about what the requirements are for a land use plan element. Then we talk about the environmental resources in the town and the fact that our office did in 2022 updated, or 2019, it was adopted in 22, updated the town's natural resources inventory, so we've got a current NRI moving forward. There's some language in there, a summary of what it generally spoke to. Page 136, we talk about flooding issues and post-Sandy, and we have some FEMA maps in there. These are just downloaded right out of the FEMA website. We talk about our flood zones. We talk about our critical areas.
Do you have those flood maps here or not?
You mean physically tonight?
Well, or that you can show?
No.
Okay, because I was looking at, I was just curious. I mean, it looks like they're all just basically all along the streams, but I couldn't tell from that.
If you go to page 143 and 144, what we did was took the information from the FEMA flood insurance rate maps, which are the black and whites,
Right.
and then superimposed them with the flood zones onto an aerial.
Is this one the one you're talking about?
Yes, except mine is in color. Yours is apparently not.
I did notice that.
Okay. So if you can see through, I had to pare down my program
That's okay.
to be able to, like we spoke about earlier today, to be able to get it to flow back and forth. This would never have worked. So
I'll
it's
harass you
there.
about it later. It's just, it's information I would like to see, but.
Okay. Then we talk about the land use plan amendment on page 146. And that goes through the different zones in town. On 148, there's a map of how the zones overlay significant rights-of-way. 149, we show a map that speaks to how the zones overlay the tax map. And on 151, we show how the zones overlay property class codes. So each property is given a tax assessment code based on its use. So a code of 1 is vacant land, a code of 2 is residential 1 to 3 units, pardon me. Codes of 3, A and B are farms, 4 is commercial, 4A is commercial, 4B is industrial, it goes on and on and on, it's laid out in there. Those are, what we did was we used those codes to begin to take a look at existing zoning over what the land use is, okay? And just to give you all an understanding, we've spoken many times about how the zoning lines have never been adjusted to keep up with increased accuracy of the lot lines. And in many cases, they haven't been adjusted to reflect subdivisions or consolidations or things like that. So I just want to give you an idea of what the impact of that is. So this is just a map of the northern section of the town. It happens to be the PA zone, but it doesn't have to be. Those dark lines are lot lines, okay? So the first thing we did is we overlaid pre-existing zoning. And that may take a minute or two to load up.
There it is.
Okay, so what you can see, and actually, is that in many areas, the zone lines don't match up with the lot lines. Happens all over town. Some areas they do, some areas they don't. So what we did is, the first thing we did is adjusted zone lines to reflect current lot geometry circa, I think the most current map we have is 2022, I think. I forget, it's in there someplace. But it's as current as anybody has, and it really then aligns zoning with lot geometry. Then if we start on page 153, each chapter under this section of the land use plan, under 6.4, speaks to a specific zone. The first section, the first map, when we introduce the zone, is what's there today. So that is what's there today. We then go through each zone and we talk about what's permitted. We talk about certain things that are unique to each zone where it's applicable. And then for each zone, we say after an in-depth analysis of whatever zone it is, the master plan update recommends, and we have a series of recommendations. And that is a template, a model that we go through for each zone. And some recommendations have to do with language in Chapter 175, add it, delete it, modify it, bring it up to date. And then we talk about moving lot lines, or zone lines. And each it's loading in, bear with me a second. So each chapter or subsection ends with a recommendation to move lines. And what you see here, and that's about, it's the resolution is much better on my screen in terms of color contrast. But what you see is original lot line in red, or original zoning district line in red, and revised zoning district line in blue. Okay? And what you can see for this is the PA zone, is that other than making modifications to reflect better, more accurate lot line geometry, we are not moving anything in this zone from a policy standpoint. Okay, and this is sort of a conversation we'll have as we go through each particular zone. So for here, for the PA, there really is no change other than accuracy.
The two light lots being,
That's a different zone, and I'll get to that in
right, that's a
next
special
section.
ag district. and
Yeah,
It
exactly.
it corresponds exactly to where the farm boundaries are.
So,
Right, but our old map didn't do that.
Well, they were not as accurate as they
That's
were
the
doing
point.
now.
so but we're not affecting anyone in any way.
Not here. On the geometry side, I don't think it's a valuable exercise for anybody's time for me to go through the recommendations to the ordinance. I would have hoped everybody would have read that, and if you have any problems with the recommendations as they're written, or if you have anything additional, just let us know. But we'd be here forever if we went through all of that.
Well, on some of these low-intensity use, I think it makes better sense maybe to focus on that when we get into the town districts. So
I
that
don't
was-
disagree, I don't disagree. So in terms of the PA district, can I just put in my notes, that everybody's okay and there's no recommendation?
No, I have at least one point that I'd like to raise. On several of the districts, PA, FA, special PA, I forget exactly where all it ended. There is a suggestion that we allow infrastructure that is built to serve adjacent zones or neighboring zones. And my question is, that's an issue that Pinelands might have a cow about. I mean, I remember a number of years ago, we wanted to run a sewer line through the AP zone. No hookups, just run the sewer line to allow us to sewer an additional part of town, which you'd think would be a good thing, because we'd be taking people off septic systems. And Pinelands absolutely would not do it, would not give us permission to do it. And so I don't know, that recommendation appears, and I like the recommendation, I think it makes good sense, but that's a place that we might have an issue with Pinelands. I'll let Ed correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, they do have that sticking point. We had tried to make that argument with the compatible industrial zone around the airport to try to help boost the development potential of that, and with the proviso that there would be no hookups to the force main along the way, but they had a hard time digesting.
That's the way I remember it too,
Right.
but I could be.
So, I totally get what you're saying. Let me just give the other side of that coin, is that when you look at that recommendation that you just talked about, and by the way, it says as appropriate,
Yes, it does.
okay? When you look at that recommendation for the PA zone, it's a similar recommendation for the SAP zone.
Right.
It strikes me that there is an ability to do what is needed. Obviously, it has to be subject to the Pinelands.
That was my only point. I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. But
Would
that
it,
doesn't mean Pinelands is going to say yes.
would it be appropriate to add language in there that just says subject to Pinelands approval?
Well,
I think that
you'll
goes
hear
without
from the
saying.
Pinelands when they review the plan, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I have no problem with the language, keeping it as it is.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to raise that. I want us to be aware of what we're going into.
Boy, totally aware of everything about the Pinelands and their ability to lord over us. Okay, so other than that, does anybody have, I'm just making a note.
You know, I like the idea that we're more accurate mapping, but from a regulatory point of view, where that line exists on a legal deed, it's where that boundary is, and it doesn't change. For example, wherever the ownership of that, within that special ag districts, the lots involved on the deed would hold. If you have an inaccuracy in the mapping because of the inaccuracy of the map scale you're using, it would always still hold. But I agree, it's worth doing.
Well, I would imagine, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that any kind of deed instrument that would govern that would have been surveyed here. No, you don't think so?
No, especially in the preservation area and some of those low intensity areas, I doubt if they were all surveyed. Or whether you could find them. I mean, you would see a deed restriction, a deed description, if you're lucky, if you could find them, but a survey going back in a day, maybe. I think maybe you're most likely to have them in the special ag district areas, possibly, but I couldn't tell you that or guarantee that would be the case all the time. I know we have deeds for some of the ag pieces that we own that just call for a pile of clams, starting at a pile of clams in a ditch between two properties.
Where George Washington might have once walked.
At one time, right.
Yeah. Okay. So if that's good, we'll move on to the
question.
Sure.
On that number 3, removing development credits as a use. I don't know, what was that? I don't understand.
So they have the language in our ordinance under the heading of permitted uses. It says Pinelands development credits.
Right.
It's not a use. It's not gas station. It's not farm. It's just a regulatory requirement. Look, we're not going to be able to get rid of the language totally. I just think it needs to be relocated to where it makes more sense.
It kept popping up, but I just didn't get
Exactly.
the reason why it was going on. All right.
Exactly.
Well, are you saying that shouldn't be listed as a permitted use?
I think it should be listed there,
Right.
but not under permitted use.
Mhm.
I think it needs to be, in my mind, its own bullet item or its own number.
Right. I think the only, winding the clock backwards and looking at it how it got there, is that there was issues of the constitutionality of the extent of the regulation in some of these districts, particularly in the preservation area and in the ag production area. And they wanted to, and they established the minimum standards that we had to meet when we did the land use plan and the zoning. The Pinelands credits was there to help protect against that challenge of a taking. So.
Absolutely, and I understand why
Right.
they're there, and I understand how they function.
Right.
I just think,
I know, Stu, you're having problems with it, but.
you don't eat soup
yeah.
with a fork. I
Right.
mean, it's just,
But I think
It's not a use.
the Pinelands credits were in the minimum standards of the comprehensive management plan that had to be included in the zoning as per the CMP.
absolutely, keep it
Okay.
in the zoning.
Okay,
Just don't put it under a permitted use.
right.
It's just
not a
an
use.
added layer of regulation.
You have no problem with me.
It's not a use.
Okay, so.
Up in New
we're good-
Lisbon, they might have a different idea, but no problem with me.
Yep. So let me close out of this. Bear with me. And now we're going to get to what is the inverse, sort of the inverse of the map we just saw, which is these two insets, the special agriculture, or the production, the SAP zoning district, which is surrounded by the AP. So this is existing zoning as to where we are right now.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, 156. And let me just zoom in. Okay, same thing. The zoning is offset from the lot lines. So what we are recommending is that it simply be adjusted to follow the lot lines.
And that's 206.
How far out?
That's actually not 206. That's Williamstown. Is that 206?
That's good.
Yeah, that's 206.
You may be right. Yeah. Okay.
It's the two large blueberry farms that you see when you go.
Both sides?
Both sides of it.
Right. And I think the other is Cranberry Bog, the one that's
Yeah,
off
it's
of
that
it.
long one.
Right.
Dead end road over there.
Right.
Right.
So again, you know, we go through what's permitted, we go through the recommendations. The only change here, other than what's in the recommendations, is, or the recommended changes to the ordinance, is just to align the map with the lot lines. Doc, I'm going to assume your same comment
Yeah,
carries
it applies,
through.
yeah, it appears in multiple sections, and ditto, you know.
So, does anybody have any comments?
What's the difference, and just reading the bullet points and trying to match everything up, what's the difference between these two districts, the one that we just talked about and the one that we're looking at right now?
They're very similar.
So wasn't the first one that we did was preservation area?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you'll probably find it is in terms of the type of agriculture, that's a lot.
yeah, so the preservation area, the PA, permits berry agriculture and horticulture, but actually they both do. Frankly, I mean, you look through here, and I didn't do the exercise to lay out the uses side by side and everything, but they are very, very similar.
Okay. And I'm more asking just because I don't know, but, I mean, is there a way to consolidate some of these zones and look at that further? So, and maybe not in this instance, but maybe, you know, in a different instance, just consolidating of the zones to one overall?
I think if we were
or would that-
masters of our own domain, I would say absolutely. I don't think the Pinelands is gonna go for it.
The Pinelands would probably say, this is, you know.
No, those are definite Pinelands management districts. We don't have a control over that.
Okay, that makes sense. So
That's
that's
the way
out
that
of our
goes. Right.
jurisdiction.
Do they
I
have
guess.
different things for these two zones, the Pinelands, that they would keep them separated? Then if we have them similar, Pinelands have something that makes them different?
Ours flowed out of the Pinelands,
Okay.
so they established the overarching, and then we came in with the more specific.
Okay. So So theirs should be similar too, on
Yeah.
the, okay.
Okay, is everybody good with this?
Maybe one point of clarification for Jonathan is that the agriculture in the preservation area is very agricultural, and horticulture of native plants and other agricultural activities compatible with the existing soil, yada, yada, yada. I think within the special ag areas, you probably have more discretion as to what type of agriculture. I don't think they're going to breathe down your throat, but if somebody wanted to clear, for example, the blueberry farms and raise sweet corn,
Agricultural
Yeah,
wouldn't
that-
be native, it would be,
it wouldn't necessarily have to be native.
right, okay, that makes sense.
Okay. The next one, and give me a second, but the next one is going to be,
FA,
Yeah, forest area.
yeah, the forest area. You just, now this one, we basically have four actually, FA zones. Okay? So the first one,
Are these all just lot line adjustments according to the accurate mapping?
I want to go through them. I'm pretty sure they are, but I want to make sure that I'm
That's what it
correct.
is, right.
So here, this one is a lot line, just lot line adjustments. Then if we go down, okay, this one there is one small area, and let me zoom in. Where we are recommending that the FA be expanded. So here, this is just lot line stuff. Here, we are recommending that the FA be expanded, and the printing's too small for me to figure out which street that is.
9th Street and 2nd Road. That's where I live.
Okay, every time I zoom in, the print gets smaller.
That's all woods.
So it's taking away from what zone to give to what zone?
That's what I'm checking right now to confirm.
I thought that zone district boundary was always encompassing the white area.
Not according to our records.
Well, where did you get those records?
It's the zoning map. It's the town's official zoning map.
Well,
All right, let's see what we got here.
that district boundary was adjusted back in the day when Hammonton had to expand the Pinelands town boundary to incorporate the land application site. The area you have circled there in red is a premature subdivision. Some of the lots are owned privately, but most of them are owned by the town. And that was changed from rural residential into the forest district in order to accommodate the requirement of the Pinelands to negotiate the exchange of land in one district, which would include the land application site and a certain golf course, and into the Pinelands town, and this out of the Pinelands town into the forest district.
So you're saying that's 9th and 2nd,
Yeah, I live right next door.
You live on that corner?
I live right,
and that white spot?
yeah, both sides.
So,
So your tractor's adjacent to that area?
I can't,
Tractor
for some
sitting out
reason,
there.
I can't pull up the database.
That's where the tractor is.
I know.
Are those,
I go by it every
So
day.
you're familiar with that area then?
A little bit.
Yeah.
are those lot
I've been
lines,
up there once or twice.
let's say in the white area there,
They're lot lines.
They are?
It was a premature subdivision. Some of the lots are owned privately. Most of the white area is owned by the town.
Except the corner,
Hmm?
except the corner.
Except the corner and the other piece on the other side of it.
Right? That corner's all open.
Hmm?
The corner's all open.
That's where the tractor's at.
What's that?
The corner's all open, there's nothing there, there's just.
Well, the corner is where I live.
Okay,
Oh,
so
there is a
I
house
think
there.
outside here, this is agricultural production.
Hmm?
That's where the greenhouses are too.
Right, right. All the white is agricultural production.
So Ed, are you saying that what he's reading is inaccurate to what you have?
No, the
in history?
green is in the forest area. And I always thought that that incorporated everything that was wooded out there. And they're saying that there is I would imagine that's a road in the premature subdivision that was never built, that you're just moving it over to the other edge of what I call a premature subdivision.
What you're calling that, is that owned by the town or no?
The small lots that you see there, I believe, are privately owned.
Okay.
The majority of it, which is all white, is owned by the town, I believe.
Oh, you're talking to the right side.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, they will never be, they're not buildable, they will never be worth anything, and, you know, they are entirely surrounded by woods, and they are themselves wooded.
Right. Okay.
So, are you suggesting we do something different than what is proposed here?
No,
Oh, okay.
So
I'm just
where were
amazed
you
that it
going
isn't
to
in the
begin
forest
with
district
that?
already.
You wanted to move the,
So what we are recommending is that the zone boundary line between the FA and this particular portion of the AP zone be adjusted to put this land here into the FA.
and what would that do?
What we weren't able to show you here, when we went over this with the steering committee over in my office, we had the aerial photograph underneath, and it reflects existing lot, generally, existing lot features. It's a wooded area. So it just made sense.
Okay, the only question I have is how does that affect, if they're individually owned lots, you're saying?
Mhm.
How does that affect that person? Does it affect them in a negative way?
And practically speaking, they're undevelopable.
So it doesn't
Could they
make a
clear it
difference?
and farm it if it was in the existing, and now they can't clear it because it has to stay forest? What would it be
The
eliminated?
the roads are not constructed, they're unimproved roads on a paper subdivision map. You would never have enough acreage to accumulate an acre of contiguous ground, which would be the least, the very minimum
So
that you
the
would need.
bottom line, what's that area, like foot by foot wide or?
Is there a size?
Distance-wise?
Yeah,
Let me see if I can get you. So this is,
Roughly.
300 feet by 1,000.
Oh, okay. Right,
They're like 30 by 90 lots. They're very, very small.
30 by 90.
They're very small.
Yeah, okay.
What is that one strip of white up there on the, right there?
This?
Yeah.
That is the lot line adjustment that we are recommending. Right now, this lot line here, this is the lot line.
Okay.
We're just suggesting that the zoning line marry up with the lot line.
Okay.
And then move that into the forest part.
And then move this into the forest.
So, I mean, that 300, is my math right? It's 300,000 square feet, right? So 100 feet or 300 feet by 1,000 feet.
Right.
So acreage-wise, that's 5 acres?
Yeah. The lot adjoining it is the lot I live on, and that's about 5 acres. So they're about the same size. But it's impractical to consider that.
But it's unimprovable, it's, nobody can do anything with those lots at any given point in time?
If somebody were to acquire all those lots and consolidate them into one big lot, it would be a 5-acre lot, right? More or less.
Well, if the town would be willing to do that.
Oh, the town, I forgot some of that's town property.
The majority of it is.
But here's
3.2.
to make it build.
Well, the majority of it's towns and it's not.
But it's town-owned
What's that?
land.
Right, it kind of negates
Right.
everything,
Yeah.
right? So if it was a
Whatever
much
the town wants to
bigger,
do.
and I'm sure we're
But
gonna
it's-
have a little bit of that
It's in
conversation.
an ag production area. If they want to farm.
It answers my question,
So
like
Stuart,
it's,
if someone wanted it, they would then, it would just come through us as a special application.
Yeah, it would be, I mean,
If there was a problem, yeah, that they need.
assuming this zoning change goes through and
Right.
assuming the Pinelands then blesses it and it becomes part of our new zone plan, they come for a variance.
Okay.
If indeed anybody, I mean, first they'd have to acquire the property,
Right.
in which case,
yeah, so it's.
you know, there would be a larger public process because the town would have to make it available.
So that is.
But it doesn't shut the
lots,
wall.
right?
None
It just lets us-
none of this shuts the
Yeah,
wall.
okay.
But someone to acquire it, if it's all town-owned land, or most of it's town-owned, like, all those are individual lots, right? So it's not just the one big rectangle, we were just saying that it's total area.
Right.
But just doing the math, Ralph had his calculator out, that's 6.8 acres. So at 6.8, that's two lots. But again, it's a lot of work and over that given period of time, so.
I don't think it's 6 acres.
And what we don't know right now, and I don't remember frankly, is what the wetland situation is, what really is, leaving aside all
Right.
access and all that other stuff, what is really developable.
Yeah, so,
It's a sweet piece of land. It's all high and dry. There's no wetlands there. But again, it's the practical difficulty of accumulating all the land.
right.
I'm not sure that all the small lots are in common ownership either.
For reality, the only place you can only go on the second roadside in that one, because that's only 3 with 2 acres. They would have to even consider it. Right?
Say that
Before they
again,
go back.
I'm sorry, say that.
You can only develop right here, if someone were to put a house there, you can only do the second road.
As a practical matter,
Yeah, so you would have
Yeah.
to,
I didn't hear you, Jimmy.
you could only use the second roadside.
Yes,
Reality,
that would be
right?
the frontage.
So, yeah.
Right.
So even more so, it's even more moot at this point
Exactly,
for
there's
us.
not
Yeah,
much-
For this particular instance, so the recommendation just,
Stands.
we agree, right?
Yeah, I agree, as long as we're not hurting anybody. Those bad
Yeah.
accounts,
It
I
would
just
come
don't
back
wanna.
here and you would be able
Right.
to approve it if it was,
Yeah.
feasible.
What's that?
They could come back to us and ask for relief to be able to put a house there.
Who could?
If somebody wanted to put a house there at some later point in time or something,
On those
Yeah.
properties? Well, you would have to accumulate the odd
Yeah.
lots.
Right,
I
well,
don't-
if they
Yeah,
checked all the
somebody did
blocks.
that, and then the town would have to agree to
Exactly.
sell the other lots. I always thought, to tell you the truth, back in the day when that land, that management district swap occurred, that the boundary actually was supposed to be the entirety of the premature subdivision. You're telling me something I didn't know. I always assumed it was forest area already.
Do we gain anything in a trade-off, given that it's becoming forest land?
That was one of the things that we talked about when we, just a guiding philosophy to keep in our back pocket as part of the negotiations with the Pinelands folks. Whether that becomes a successful strategy or not will remain to be seen.
All right. So we're all kind of in agreement then,
Yes.
moving forward with that?
Yeah, there's no negative of doing that.
Okay, the next is the AP zone, and we are now moving to page
163.
163. And there are really, move this, arguably 3 sections of the AP zone. And we take these one at a time. So there's a couple of areas where we did make some adjustments at the policy level. These are lot lines here. Here,
It's the airport, right?
it's the airport, exactly. And what we are suggesting, let me get, right now, that's the current zoning. And we're suggesting that there's an opportunity here for some commercial development in support of the airport, potentially. We don't know what that would be, but what we are recommending is that that the airport zone, let me just make sure I'm getting this correct. Try to find what I have. Totally lost as to where that recommendation is. Bear with me a second, I'm sorry.
That's in the preservation area now, Stu?
It is the
The piece of land in
AP
question?
now. This yellow, or I guess olive in here, is the AP,
Oh, that's AP?
and trying to get to,
Is that where he has, the guy has the stainless steel swings there on the corner by the airport?
I was gonna
Yeah,
say
it's
the
by
same
the
thing.
airport.
That's-
I'm trying to figure out the orientation to the runway.
He sells those stainless steel
It used to be
Yeah,
master
that's,
wires.
that,
processing containers there.
Used to
Right
be
when
ma-
you make the left into the airport on the right, isn't that what that is?
I'm not sure, Chris.
Used to be
That,
master wire and
that
fence.
is in,
What's that?
It was master wire and fence at one time.
He's got these.
but what this is,
high-pressure
I don't
tanks,
know.
so, yeah.
But I thought that
This
piece of property was
I'm not sure.
town-owned.
I'm
It's
not
not
sure
bad.
about that.
Well, that's the airport, and that's across the street from the airport.
Yes.
Where's
That
Columbia
would be,
Road?
that would be
I
Columbia
don't
Road.
see Columbia
heading
Road.
east and west,
Well, isn't that Columbia Road bending right there?
left to right.
I'm not, this isn't working the way it's supposed to be working. I should be able to identify the zones here, and I'm not able to do that, and I don't know why.
Stu, can you zoom out a little bit so we can get oriented to where it is? Where are we
It's
in relation to Columbia?
refreshing.
Huh?
It's refreshing.
Oh.
Where your arrow is now, that's Columbia Road, isn't that?
Well, this piece of property straddles both sides of Columbia Road?
That's what it,
I think so. I think it was Columbia.
that's what I was
We've got both
assuming
sides of
that
Columbia
is,
Road then.
which
What-
This cuts
on the
out.
other side is Columbia Fruit's got small plants there right now.
Right.
The what? No, that's across the street from the airport. The airport is in the white area. Right, and in fact, I think that diagonal strip is the piece that has the landing strip on it.
This here
Yeah, that.
is the runway.
Okay.
I'm gonna call
Where
it the
where-
landing
where you-
strip.
where you looking? Oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
And the airport cafe is at the end of the road.
Yeah.
Not quite.
So that is what is being recommended there. And if you want to, I can go back and check on things and come back again.
There it is. It's on page 176 under APCLI. At Columbia Road and Academy Drive, be adjusted to capture town-owned lands, thereby increasing the lands available to support the expansion, development of Hammonton Municipal Airport. And that's what that squiggly block is, right? That's town-owned. I'm on page 170.
170?
That was what I remembered, but it
No,
wasn't,
there it
it wasn't in the AP zone.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sure there's a story of how the town acquired that odd-shaped piece.
Well, there used to be a house there, it belonged to the Renzis.
Ah, see, I told you there was a story.
There's a creek that runs through there too.
That's why we need people like you around, we don't have to lose all the history.
So
What's
are
that?
we okay to move along?
Right. Especially when they die.
I think
Okay.
so. Everybody okay with so far?
I'm perfect, I was just
Yeah.
explaining what it was, I'm perfectly happy with it.
The next piece is,
Oh, wait a minute, I did have something about, in the AP zone, and air, it says AP zone and airports. Ah. Permitted in the AP zone, is this correct? I'm on page 164. Airports and heliports which are necessary to agricultural uses and are used exclusively for the storage, fueling, loading, and operation of aircraft as part of an ongoing agricultural operation. Do we have places where that's going on, just out of curiosity?
that's mine, if it is, I'm not aware of it. Where, just, you're on 164?
Yeah.
Now, what district are you in? The AP district?
Yes.
Well, the AP district, that's agricultural production.
Right.
Well, those kinds of uses I have known to have existed on agricultural lands. The one place that I know of was not in Hammonton, it was in Hamilton Township. I don't know if there's any other ones that are located in Hammonton, but they have been known to exist on agricultural lands
Right.
in the past.
I would assume that
Especially
almost
large
any
ones.
helicopters or planes that are used for, let's say, spraying
Right?
would be based at the Hammonton Airport
No.
today.
Helicopters.
No, they're down in, near Buena, isn't it? Downstown? Isn't
Oh,
it?
okay.
Downstown,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's where the guys spray at it, right?
Yeah. The ones that have the ag planes.
Although I don't know whether they fill up in Hammonton and then come back
It
out.
doesn't
Well,
matter.
because there's a lot of aircraft that fly over my house that I know are that, so I feel like they're coming
No,
from that airport.
those are coming from downs, and they fill up there too,
Even
but
down-
not at our airport.
Yeah, they have
Well-
that special storage for the pesticide there.
Okay, I mean, I just know in the past when I complained about how close they were to my house, I went to the airport, and he said they just flew out of there. So I don't know whether they stopped for
They went for lunch.
maybe another purpose,
No.
other than to buzz my house. but-
I don't know if there's any active farms that are using helicopters based in their own farm at this point. But that's not to say they haven't done that in the past.
Or they may
The
like
one
to
I'm
live right
familiar
here.
with, though, is not in
This is
Hammond.
just it's not even farmland, there's
But is
people
that
park there
something
for lunch,
that
so that's why this
we can
county
control,
is-
like
It's not
restrict?
part of Columbia
Like,
Fruit, it's just sitting
Can
there.
we restrict that?
So.
And it could be so.
Can we remove
It
that
could
from
be
the
something
AP?
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
Some sort of solution. Okay.
Yeah, but can,
I would suspect in the AP zone, Highlands has already decided that's staying in.
Is that already within our existing master
Yeah.
plan?
because our airport is AP/CLI,
Right.
right? So if that was the case, the CLI is obviously for,
Compatible light industrial.
yeah, right, it's more
Yeah.
commercialized than just
You know,
agricultural.
the hangars and stuff that are out there,
Right.
plus,
Yeah, we're
Plus the
good.
cafe, the apron
Okay.
cafe.
All right,
right.
So, the next section is, I think this is 206. It's so small on my screen, I really can't read.
That's,
This here?
what page you on right now?
This would be
What page?
166.
Let me back up to don't change that yet, on 165. Does Old Forks Road extend to Main Road?
No, no,
no.
no, not at all.
Because it says D on page 165, along Old Forks Road, south of Main Road.
Yeah, that was, I'm not saying it intersected with Maine, I'm just saying it's south of Maine, just to give a location where we're talking about.
Maybe it should say south of the White Horse Pike?
What's wrong
That
with
would be
South
better.
Main Road?
Because Old Forks Road never gets to Main Road. That was my whole problem.
Yeah, I understand the way he's saying it, I understand it that way.
But would south of the White Horse Pike be clear, like the doc is saying, right?
Well, I think so, but,
I think so.
I mean,
One other
it's sort of like
terrace.
on the part of Old Forks Road south of Trenton.
There was something somewhere I read in the terrace in me. I didn't know that. And I gotta, I'll find it when we get, as we get to it.
I'm sorry, Stuart, I'm nitpicking.
I will double check the location descriptors, just to make sure.
Okay. Moving right along.
Okay, now you were gonna go to page 166.
Yes, so, right here, so this is the current zoning, or, yeah, the current zoning. And we're recommending
Oh, that little carve out.
that this carve out to for here to just reflect the lot lines, and then for here to reflect existing land uses when we put the aerial underneath.
So
There is development there.
So
we're
what are-
going, which way are we going, from what to what?
I'm having trouble identifying which zone. This, so we are carving into
The ag production.
the production, but it's not agricultural land. And I'm just not able to find out what,
So are you saying that's developed there?
yeah,
Do you don't remember what it was?
I think it's housing, but I'm not sure. When we went and did this, we used the aerial underneath it all.
All right.
Everything in white would be the Pinelands Town District.
Yeah, I just can't remember which zone it is.
Right, okay.
And my system isn't letting me.
It's either the RR,
Is that what, is that what you're saying?
It sort of makes sense where it would be.
It's probably the rural residential district, I think.
There's already back there.
Maybe this will work.
So is that going up 206?
No, 206 parallel.
That's 206.
206
Right
where his
there.
point is.
Oh, here, on the
Yeah,
other side.
so that's in one.
What is that, Jim?
That's 206 where his,
No, and the next big road over is?
Basin?
Oh, that's
No.
Basin.
yeah, but it's up one. That's not, that's way above the Weber's Pike.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Is that about where, behind the red barn?
Okay, highway business.
Yeah.
This is highway business. And then this is, AP.
Where did your words say that? That would be one of your recommendations, right?
Yes,
Not to that yet.
I think it's on page 164, 1B, down on the right, lower right, if I have this.
For selected properties along Basin Road south of Union Road, be adjusted to run along the rear lot lines. It doesn't say anything about capturing. Because planning is to resist this, because we're giving AP to highway business.
That's right. That makes more sense.
Is that zone not going all the way through the property? Or it's not going to the edge of Basin Road? Is that what?
It splits, existing or proposed?
between the green and the white, where you have the red line going up right
The
now.
red line is current zoning, and it is based off of some
What he wants to do is take some.
measure, some distance from the right-of-way, not reflecting lot lines.
Okay.
On this map, it's rural residential that would, is what it would become.
So this is Basin Road,
Right.
okay? Then if we go to zoning,
The very front.
that's rural residential, yes. So rural residential will come back to this shape.
The very
Stu?
bottom is the pike right now, so that's Atlantic care at the very bottom here.
Correct.
I think we're pretty far above that.
It's not at it. Atlantic care is there. So-
This is the pike.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're all houses there. That makes sense.
So the lower portion of the adjusted area, that's going to reflect present lot lines also?
I think it already, if you look at, let me turn it off.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, because there's existing homes between Atlantic Care and wherever that area is.
Deeper lots.
I
Yes.
don't see a lot line there.
So here are the lot lines, right? And the zoning reflects those lot lines. It just doesn't here.
But that, at the top part, it's following the rear property lines. But there it's not, is it?
No, but my recollection is that there's agriculture going on back here,
There is.
and there's buildings, development, whatever it is, I'm gonna say houses, but I don't really remember exactly. So what we did was try to follow the disturbed area.
But in each case, all that property is in the Pinelands Town Management District, right? Yes,
Okay,
all this, all the
Yes.
colored area. So it's not gonna be a major issue with the Pinelands.
okay, so we're good with that?
Well, no,
I guess.
in his version, we're taking some of that AP land.
Within the
That AP land is outside
So-
the town boundaries.
Yeah, I agree with that. Stuart, so we're essentially, we're putting a zone line, not necessarily over a lot line.
We tried to overlay the zone lines on top of lot lines where we could.
Right.
But there are some lots that are so deep or so large that, and the uses are different enough that it just, we couldn't follow that.
Right, okay.
No, we're not, it's on the.
Had we done it, for example, for those lots, some of those bigger lots that we just saw, we would have had a lot of vacant land
Left facing right.
in the RR district,
Right.
which would lead to more housing.
Above
Right.
that, on,
Are you taking land out of the AP district without adjustment? Is that what that is?
Yeah,
Hold on.
yes.
in that instance, yes.
Yes. We are, following the lot lines here for these 1, 2, 3, 4. And then here, we're following existing development.
Okay. But the olive area colored on the map, that's currently zoned AP, correct?
Yes.
So in answer to your question, yes, he's
Yes.
taken, yes.
So that's gonna be, a larger issue vis-à-vis the Pinelands, is all I gotta say.
Again, and I get that, we get that, and we tried to respect the Pinelands wherever we could. This just, it didn't make sense when you look at what's there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. At
And
the end
you
of,
see, that line was offset in every instance. I think, can you point to Basin Road for everybody? That's
That's it.
Basin Road.
Right.
The idea when the plan was developed way back in the beginning was to try to keep, when you had a management district boundary, such as the Pinelands Town, up against a less restrictive or more restrictive management district boundary, that we kept both sides of the road where development was allowed to occur within the less restrictive zone, so that when you were allowed to extend the infrastructure of water and sewer, that both sides of the road could be tied into that,
Right.
so that you could help, pay for that improvement. If you could only single load that, then on one side of the road, you would have, a situation where development was allowed to occur, and on the other side of the road, it would just be basically pretty much restricted. But the idea of being able to afford the extension of the infrastructure with just single loading it with tie-ins from one side of the road would make it mostly cost prohibitive.
But this doesn't change that.
yeah,
No,
this
it
this
doesn't.
isn't that instance.
No, he explains why it was done.
I'm just trying to explain why it was offset from Basin Road. And it's two radically different management districts.
Yes.
Okay, here's one where there is a significant change. And
Now, where is this?
this is on page 166. It is, let me see if I can find.
That looks to be
That's
Royce
Pleasant Mills
Run.
Road.
Pleasant Mills, yeah, this is on 165C on the upper left.
Okay.
Well, it's on the right side of Pleasant Mills, isn't that's all the Boyer Avenue area, or is that,
Yeah, that's Royce Run there.
or it's north of it, behind it?
So you're bringing, in summary, you're bringing the existing AP down.
Correct. So,
You're following the forest line, basically.
Correct,
If
yeah.
I look at a satellite photo.
yeah, so here we're following the actual lot line where the, there's some wetlands that are carving it up there.
Right.
But here, if you look at the aerial underneath, it's all active agriculture.
Right.
So we're bringing that under the what did I say?
AP.
AP zone.
Yeah. No, I agree with that one. That's more clear than the last one we just talked about.
Now, are the people who own those lots gonna be upset?
Yeah, what's the process with that? Do the residents get notice, like if there's, just for sake of argument, say there's 3 houses along that road and we're changing the zone, do they get notified or they
So,
just?
there's a, under the municipal land use law, if you make a zoning change as part of a master planning process, you do not need to individually notice property owners.
Right.
And the way it works is a property owner has a year from the time that the zoning change occurs in order to get what's known as a certificate of nonconformity, and we've dealt with those here on occasion. And that basically says you were once legal, you're no longer legal, but you're officially grandfathered. It's basically a diploma that, a certificate that officially grandfathers you. After that 1 year, and that is done administratively by the zoning officer.
And that certificate is permanent, it's forever.
Correct.
But who initiates the process? The owner has to?
The owner has to initiate.
Well, how are they
the
gonna
process.
know? Just because they're gonna have to read through a master plan?
Well, they're, at some point, yeah. So let me talk about that. Let me take that in a second. After a year, they're not allowed to do, the zoning officer is no longer allowed to issue those. They have to come to the board. Us acting as the zoning board. What I have done in the past, and this is all going to depend on how town council wants to go, is I have added language in the ordinance that recognizes, let's just say Mrs. Jablonski has a single family home right here. That recognizes that, and in the ordinance itself says that that is allowed to continue under the pre-existing regs until such time as, and we can figure out what that is. That is one way to go. We've also had a situation where a town will send out a notice as part of the tax bills that says we're undergoing a master plan. We are not required to notice, but these are, you may be in an area where your property may be affected. Come in and talk to the zoning officer. That way, at least, they're notified.
That's, I think, to me, would probably be the best way to go, because I think we never want to negatively impact anyone. And for somebody to turn around and say, hey, they're paying attention, they're not paying attention to us. But to turn around and say, hey, listen, Mrs. Jones, or whoever it is, Mrs. Jablonski, just so you know, this is what happened, if you want more information.
Well,
I think that's the right thing to do. And how many people are we really affecting when we're talking about something like this?
I couldn't tell you.
No, but roughly, it can't be that many.
Well, if you're already sending out tax bills,
Well, I understand
It
that, but I'm
does-
just talking about how many could have possibly, is there a dozen people involved in that section?
in this section, well, let's just say 1, 2,
Looks like
3,
you-
4,
well,
Well, you
5,
got
6,
the 4 lots
7,
on the
8,
right side, deep lots.
10, 11. Let's call it a dozen there. There may be common ownership, I don't know, but
Whatever it may be.
there's a dozen, it looks like pieces of a dozen lots.
Okay.
but you are dramatically affecting their development potential, even though there may be just a single house on a lot. The development potential, if you look at Royce Run there, and you can see what you're talking about in terms of potential development, in terms of density and intensity of use. When you switch it over to ag production, you're never going to see anything like that in that area.
Well, and what does it affect as the house gets old and it gets torn down and it's down to the grandkids and they want to rebuild? Is that not grandfathered in? I mean,
Once,
who's going to answer those questions for those people?
that's an AJ question, that's a zoning officer question.
Will a zoning officer know that? That's a
He should.
financial future planning question
He-
versus a.
He needs to know that. Every town is, and the reason I'm hesitating is because every town has a different number. But there is a percentage of value. So if a house burns down, if half a house burns down, and it's more than 50%, and the threshold in a particular community is 50%, then they would have to come and get a variance to rebuild. If it's 40% in that particular town, then they wouldn't. And every town's different. I don't know what ours is.
That's why sometimes you see like half a house when they rebuild and they
Well, they
leave
do
one
it for the
existing wall
tax
up.
rate too,
Yeah.
so they don't get a new construction
Yep.
tax rate. But
My question is, why would one draw the line there when I see the pattern of land development on Pleasant Mills Road extending southward in the same type of development pattern all the way down to the White Horse Pike? Why wouldn't you just take all that area and put it in the ag production?
We looked at what was there physically with the aerial underneath, and we tried to strike a balance, and this was the way the committee decided to do it.
Well, God bless the committee. I appreciate their wisdom and their divine providence, but I've felt and maintained from the very beginning, where you're tweaking lot lines, I'm all for that. Where you're taking area that is and has been negotiated with the Pinelands to be developable at a certain intensity and putting it into a really restricted density, you're taking away what I call the room for natural growth in the town. What it looks like today, it may be entirely different tomorrow, and you're taking away the potential for that to look different tomorrow, and I understand that. But there's got to be some area for the town to naturally grow into, because once you hit those other management boundary districts, you're coming to a dead stop.
So the committee decided to do this just to square it off because,
We took a look at, hold on, let me see if I can get this. I'm not sure I can do this.
Take a look at what it looks like today.
Right.
right,
Right.
Yeah, but, all right, so I understand
Pull
what
it up on your
Ed's
phone,
saying.
with satellite maps, and you'll see the homes. I'll pass this around.
okay.
I don't know whether I can get this through. I'm trying to get this through to put an aerial underneath.
That's the border of the bridge, and then these are the homes right there what he's talking about. So, yeah, it's all of this right in here.
The left side of the road should be the actual ones there.
So you can see there is, the ag becomes limited below the blue line. You can't see that. You really can't see that. If you take a look here, it's much clearer.
I just do not want to negatively impact them, and that's what we're doing.
That's what you're doing there.
Yeah, this looks nice.
So, hard to see, but there's Pleasant Hills, here's the development, all the stuff we're gonna take down. We're taking away.
If you understand it from the perspective of how the town grew historically over time, if you take a substantial area on Bellevue Avenue, south of the Pike, if you go back 50 years ago, most of that was farmland. If we use the rubric we're using
Thank you for
here,
considering that.
in terms of the future development potential of the town, that would still be farmland.
I hear what you said. Look, this wasn't my decision.
I
mean,
understand.
you know, I think this becomes a board decision.
That's why we're talking about this.
Yeah, when it comes time for everybody to sit and discuss it.
So that
When it comes time to vote.
Yeah,
Right.
this is one that we just need to converse about, because I agree that the approach today, right, so the committee, right, kind of looked at all this today and said, this better aligns with what is there today, right? But to Ed's point, and I hear what Ed's saying is, 25 years from now, that could be completely different as people grow up, as, families are changing hands and everything. That could potentially be new development or new extension of residential as opposed to agricultural. And to Ed's point, once we give it up, that's it. There is no further development.
And there's got to be close to infrastructure, what you're talking about, since the other development is right next to it, right?
Well,
Right.
Yeah, there's got to
Right
be
over there, right?
big develop.
I call
The
it-
question is whether I don't know where the infrastructure actually runs and whether it would allow to be extended. And by the way, just to keep in mind, master plans get re-examined every 10 years. So what we're doing here is not fixed forever.
Right.
Just, again, not my fight, but keep that in mind. If this does not look appropriate, then
Not to step on your toes here for a second. Now, I know you're making the presentation, you're doing a fine job, and I know you work with the committee as far as, but remember one thing, the committee's given us a recommendation to look at
oh, absolutely.
this, and if we turn around and say, we just don't like this, well, maybe this is coming out of this.
Absolutely.
Okay, correct?
Right,
That's the
definitely.
whole point of these meetings, I thought.
That's what it is, so it's for a discussion, so you worked on the committee, you came up with the ideas, whoever was on that committee, and then it's for a big group to discuss it, and then it's for us to adopt it and send it to
I'm just
council.
trying to feed the information.
So is
And
the
nobody's beating you up, okay? I
So
appreciate
is the
it.
process today that we make notes about this for today, and that there is a final review from all of us as, all right, we're looking at this section, we need to go back to this we're not voting on anything.
Well, that-
Correct.
Right,
We're
and,
making notes to that.
Yeah, so far, we
Yeah.
kind of were okay with everything, well, maybe this one will not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the way I see this, and I don't think we've really gotten that far to determine exactly the mechanism, but I think
No,
we go through everything, we come back with a report that says on page 5, there was a conversation to change this to that, on page 10, it was that to this.
correct.
We take a vote on each particular, a straw vote on each particular piece, we see, take the temperature of the board, and then make the decisions accordingly.
Just a point in passing, as far as the infrastructure congruent, that means along the same boundary of the Pinelands Town Management District is the sewer service area for the town. And wherever the town boundary is, that's where we're allowed to extend sewer. So your question as to whether or not the infrastructure exists there, it most likely does not, but it can be extended there. You
under,
need to put that down in hard and fast writing because that's the way it exists. Back in the day, the Atlantic County Sewage Authority, which was before it was the Utilities Authority, there was a section of the Clean Water Act known as Section 215. They were designated the regional planning organization that had responsibility for determining in this county where the sewer would be for the purposes of federal funding, which doesn't exist anymore. But for the purposes of designating the sewer service areas in the various areas of the county, I think that still holds, and I think DEP still...
It's DEP now.
Right, DEP still abides by that. But that's how those boundaries were determined.
So-
Okay?
I'm sorry, under the red lines right now, that's not, there's no property lines there, that's
It would negatively
go right
impact
through
the
Yeah.
property
the
owner.
properties that are there presently.
Let's show you.
Yeah,
So that's the, let me take off the blue a
and
second.
I understand how you guys do
Okay, so
that. Cable, all right.
that is existing zoning.
I get how you're able to put lines there, okay. I mean, it makes more sense too.
And if you added the reg, okay, without that box.
so let's
What
just,
is
I get where they came up with why they did
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but I don't know, you know.
so let's
Yeah, I
take it on the one side, right? So just to help me continue to understand this process all the way, recommendation was made. Let's just say, for argument's sake, we don't agree. We're basically circling item C and saying we don't agree with that, aligns along Pleasant Mill, but the boundary gets adjusted, you know, it's some type of update that we're saying we don't agree with this recommendation, but we, as a board, recommend this.
Well, recommend to keep it the same as it is now.
Right, but we're not keeping it the same because we still have to align it with the rest of the boundary behind, not necessarily the
Yeah, I
road.
think we
Well-
agree with that.
Right, but all that needs to be stated some
Right.
way,
The only thing
somehow.
they do
Well,
is
I will state that.
Right,
I will give you a series of bullet items
okay,
that speaks to where further discussion needs to be
Okay.
had, and then we take action on it, and then before it gets published for a final vote, I'm guessing on this now, but before it gets published for a final vote, I'll revise the maps, so when it gets adopted clean.
right,
Mhm.
okay.
I think the major difference that's remaining is they're using a lot line as opposed to the stream, which may be a more indefinite way of describing the zone boundary, wherever the stream is located, in that it might meander, but you're using the property lines to make it more clear
Streams
and
change.
definitive, right?
Okay, so that is this piece of the world.
Yep.
Are we ready to move on?
We're gonna go to D, I'm sorry, E, sorry.
We're going to the map at the south end of town.
Right.
So bear with me a second. 'Cause I'm having problems. It's not the computer, it's the pipe. It's the Wi-Fi signal going back and forth.
You have Wi-Fi? And then, Stuart, maybe what we could do, and again, just, this is more or less helping me, but as we go to the new piece of the map, if we could just highlight what item, you know, what letter this would be underneath.
I've already got it, I'm keeping a running tab right
Perfect.
here. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. I've got okay, so let me just bear with me. Okay, so here, just some minor adjustments on lot lines on this one, this piece here, okay? As we continue west, just make sure I can get this as big as possible for you. Okay, we already talked about this area here. These are just lot line adjustments here. Here, okay, I don't like splitting blocks with zoning districts. It seemed to me, well, it seemed to the committee that as we started following lot lines, and let me just double check something here. Yeah, this, I don't want to say it's arbitrary, but I think, Mr. Willerman, this was the distance off the right-of-way line that what we're recommending is at least it gets squared off here. And then as you follow development patterns, we're recommending that this AP zone be expanded here but pitched back here.
Well, again, in the interest of full disclosure, the lot line adjustment along 10th Street to the bend where it becomes Beach Street, where you have the 300-foot offset, that is owned by a family member of mine. But again, the rationale, if you look at this on an aerial photo, you could make a good planning argument that you could take that line and extend it to 300 foot off of, instead of 10th Street, off of 11th Street, because it is all farmland. There is not a house on the other side of that 10th Street, 10th Street, that along Chew Road, you have the lots that exist along Chew Road. All the other area is all ag land. And then it gets back again to the discussion. The reason why that big chunk of ag land is in the Pinelands town, along with the little piece that's on this side, was back in the day when the process was negotiated with the Pinelands Commission. It was thought that this would be an area that the town could grow into. Remember, in the early 80s, we still hadn't had a determination of how we were going to handle items like the disposal of our wastewater, whether or not it would be a spray irrigation location somewhere or a land application like we have now. It wasn't resolved. One thing was clear: it couldn't be an interbasin transfer of that water down to the coastal plant anymore, and it could not be discharged, highly treated even, into the stream. So those were some of the considerations, I believe, that factored into the process of designating the boundaries of the town. If you were going to put the infrastructure along 10th Street in order to have development occur in that big swath of ground, the argument again was offset it so that each side of the road was capable of being in the same management district with the same level of development potential, so that one overriding consideration again was the cost of extending the infrastructure. If it could only be loaded on one side, would make it cost ineffective, if you will. When you do that, you got to figure out how to pay for it. You pay for it by people tying into it and paying connection fees. So if you restrict half of the people from being able to do that along a road where you're going to encourage development, you're making it that much more difficult to extend that infrastructure in the first place, if that makes some sense to you.
It does. I would counter the argument that how long ago was the early 1980s, and if it hasn't happened by now, no individual is doing it without governmental assistance now, so I don't know that argument still floats.
But to the opposite side then, if you want to say you're going to encourage the existing use that's there because you think of a practical matter, it's going to be too costly to extend that infrastructure, whether it's publicly financed or a combination of public and private financing, then take the line and extend it all the way over to 11th Street because it's all the same kind of land use. You're talking about a big chunk of land you're going to put in the ag production district and take away from the Pinelands town. I don't know what your committee was thinking when they you know, they took a little bit, but not all.
Well, because nobody wanted to take all of that land and put it into agricultural production,
So why take any of it at all?
because that was the
Do
decision
we
that
have a
got
member of
made.
the committee here that can tell us why they thought that way?
I don't recall why we decided that.
It was an enlightened recommendation, I would say.
I think we looked at, well, you know what, it was so long ago, I don't want to say what we looked at.
I just think that you ought to be consistent when you make those recommendations. If you do it on one side of the street, do it on the other side of the street. If the idea is to try to preserve as much farmland from the grasp of, you know, future development, then be consistent.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has a question of worrying about, you know, adjusting some lot lines that have to do.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
But when you turn around and take a chunk of property.
Well, now it's a
some-
policy thing.
Well, it didn't happen yet. Okay.
So what are we doing with this piece? What is the recommendation for these?
What, the bottom piece that you want to take out of the AP and put it back into what? Rural RR? Is that, well, that
I'll tell you in a
chunk in
second.
the bottom?
This here, yeah, give me a second.
Was that 11?
RR.
So take that one piece that you wanted to make it from AP to RR and leave the other piece alone?
I'm sorry, I don't
No, I
understand.
said, you said you wanted to make that one piece that's in the bottom that's AP and make that RR, is that what you want to do?
Yeah,
All along that.
let me just check one thing.
What they're saying is.
That one piece that's on the bottom, they want to take that from
You just want
AP
to
and make it
continue that
RR.
extension of all those residential.
If you can,
1 acre lots.
you
I
can
mean,
work
if
that out,
Pinelands
if you
would
can,
allow
yeah,
that.
if Pinelands allows that, I have no problem.
Agricultural.
But taking the property the other way is a problem.
Listen,
That's what
I
it
am
looks
not
like.
gonna do, I'm not gonna vote on that.
No, I
I'm gonna
understand
recuse
that.
myself.
It's not saying why, but that's
If
fine.
we're gonna buy
But
this.
the shape of
But
it
you
is.
don't have any interest out there.
But it was RR,
Pleasant Hill Road,
I'm
so
sorry?
you don't have
Yeah.
any interest on
No,
that other
on
one.
Pleasant Mills
No.
Road, no.
No, right,
Right, so
Let me just check
but
something.
it's the same
something
argument,
like
It's
this.
the same argument.
yeah.
But that shape, does that allow for anything?
It allows for individualized lots in that
The way
zone.
it's, I mean, what can you get out of that? It's not squaring up the,
No, probably not.
I mean, to do RR.
I'm trying to bring up an aerial here. Okay.
And I don't know if you could think about what the committee was thinking at the time.
That
What
shows
the
it-
reason was, why we did that, or they did that.
Where's the consistency in planning thought? Because that shows it very well. Look at the extent of the ag land across the road from where we're making that recommendation.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, so what the recommendation was, recognizing that this is already residential, was to follow the lot lines for the existing development.
Take the lot line along Shoe Road, take all the residential out of that as well. Put all the ag land on the other side of 10th Street. Look at how much ag land there is there. You see where your blue line is? You see where the red line is? You see what's across the way from the blue line?
Yes,
Is that ag land?
yes.
Yeah, there you go.
But remember, anything that's built out there now on ag land is what, 3.2 acres you put a home?
I'm sorry?
Well, if it's AP, right?
That's not.
Yeah, that's the way it's zoned now.
Yeah.
What's the minimum size for RR?
But as Stu says, 10 years from now, that may be a different story if you change the zoning again.
We'll get to RR, I don't know off the top of my
All right, so,
Because that's
This is
what's on the
another
other
one you
side
can
of that,
circle.
that line, right? Yeah.
That's what.
right, this is another one you could circle and could,
head. Yeah, I already did.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so now, okay, we took care of this and this, so now we are here. And this really, they're splitting lots. Let me, existing zoning, as you can see, is splitting lots. So these are really adjusted to lot lines. It looks more than it, but it really is adjusted to lot lines.
Okay.
Same thing here. Let me just confirm myself. Yeah. So, I don't know how this was originally drawn, but the lot line here actually runs down here. So we're following lot lines here. Here. I think what we did was we followed lot line, well, I know what we did. We followed lot lines here. This is the intersection. We followed the lot lines here. We brought it all the way across, and then
Where are you right now? What's those streets?
I'll tell you in a second.
Is that the 300-foot offset against Stu?
Give me a second. Let me answer one question at a time. Okay, this is the expressway.
Okay,
This is 12.
okay.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. William, what was your question?
My only concern, I can see what you're trying to do, and I don't have any problem with it. My only concern, again, is when the zoning district boundaries that you're trying to adjust are also Pinelands management area boundaries. What would seem to be a simple process will get construed into, okay, now you're taking land that was in the Pinelands Ag Production District, and you want to put it into the Pinelands Town because you are trying to follow a lot line. But that means that you've accrued more land into the Pinelands Town, and they're going to want to take it out of the Pinelands Town someplace else to balance it out.
Which is why we did what we did on the northern side of town.
Right,
Trying to find trade-offs.
right. Well, that's why when you're dealing with Pinelands Management Area Districts, boundaries, it's almost, unless it's absolutely necessary, don't open up that can of worms, even though it makes an abundance of sense.
So the idea here, because we're sitting at right off the expressway, the concept was to follow lot lines and open up the intersection for active development.
Understood.
Again, part of what we were trying to do town or municipal-wide, community-wide,
Right.
was to understand there are trade-offs, to prioritize non-Pinelands, if I'll characterize it that way, zoning,
Issues.
in certain sections of town and prioritizing Pinelands issues or Pinelands zoning in other sections of town where it made sense, and hopefully at the end of the day, come up with a compromise. So that's why partly what made sense here, especially coming off of the expressway.
I agree.
Except that somebody's gain is somebody's loss at the same time.
Well, yeah.
Unless you're the person losing.
Well, true, but my job is to give you
No,
planning recommendations. The politicians will give you electoral recommendations.
Stuart, I say it makes sense.
So let me just zoom out. And that's way too much.
I think we get through this section and then. Let's do that.
Okay, so we just talked about this, sort of a similar conversation here following lot lines. As we slide over,
That's 13th?
I think so. So here, hold on one second. This one I do remember, or at least I think I remember. Let me let the aerial refresh, because I think what we did was respected existing agriculture. Bear with me, I'm sorry. So, not in part following lot lines, but also in part following just what clearly is the development pattern. And then what we're effectively doing is increasing ag production land based on what's there.
What's going where to where, Stu? Can you explain that a little bit?
So this is the AP zone, right, the yellow?
Right.
And what we're recommending is that the AP zone be expanded here following lot lines and existing, in this case, non-development patterns.
You realize then you're reducing the development potential on that piece that you're going to put into the ag production zone.
It's actively farmed now, doesn't have to be there forever.
Right.
It is, we have these long, or I should say deep parcels
I call them bowling alley lots.
all over town.
Right.
And there is the town has a policy through its ordinance to not favor flag lots. So really in this particular case, I don't know how you get to the rear of this lot. It really is a farm lot.
We have had an example downtown where it has been done. If you believe in the laws of supply and demand, we have a severely constricted area to grow into. You notice that there has been a substantial amount of infill development. We're going back and finding little pieces that had been overlooked but are now highly desirable. We've had an example where in town more, a builder was able to acquire the rear portions of a lot of these lots and put in a pretty nice infill development right off of Valley Avenue, if you're familiar with where I'm talking. It's my sense that as we go forward, that's going to become more and more of a trend. And some of these long bowling alley lots, I think the economic incentive of the constrained supply is going to make that more and more feasible going down the line, especially as we build out the town more. So that's why, in general, I just, whatever we were able to negotiate at the very beginning as the developed, as the area where the town could naturally grow, I would hate to see giving that back, because once you give it into those less restrictive management districts, I don't think there's ever going to be a negotiation process with the Pinelands that's going to allow it to go the other way.
Where does that blue line go? I see it going horizontal, as we're looking horizontally across, and then I can't see it in the dark vegetation.
Okay, let me see if I'm answering your question by moving the cursor. So you come across here, right?
Yes,
You go up,
that's what I wanted to know. So it comes across to right there.
following the lot line.
So we are putting a big piece into AP.
We, in my mind,
In
yes, I mean, it's a
addition to
big
that
piece.
that obviously farmed piece, there's a obviously not farmed piece that would also go into AP.
Also shows that he's encroaching on his neighbor with his farm, I guess, if your lot lines are accurate.
And then, Doc, if you still need it, cross.
That's fine, it was
And down.
where it went across.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay, yeah, I get
What I would call the forest area.
Stuart,
I
can you
couldn't see
get
it
a
from the
length of
trees.
end to end on that northern piece, that little jet out? What
I'm
that
sorry,
width
what are
is?
you asking? I'm sorry.
Can you get a length of
A length.
what that, yeah, that width is?
You know what?
Just out of curiosity, so, obviously you guys can see all that houses and stuff.
271, yeah, 300.
So is it 300 lot width?
It's probably close to 1,500.
And then, you are good.
It's an acre.
I mean,
Well, let's see if we can just,
as far as like residential goes, it's closest to the street, right? I mean, you're not putting which I understand why you guys are doing it that way, why you're bringing it back.
10 acres.
10 acres, is that what you said?
Just the farmland part, not the.
oh, just the farmland part?
Yeah, that 300 by 1,500.
It's 10 acres.
Just going off of the aerial. Yeah, I'm not gonna do the math. I got it in square feet. See if I can, I don't even know if it does.
So the other one's gonna have to, probably about 7 acres, 17 acres.
So what do you wanna do with this piece?
And which bullet point is this?
Which bullet point?
Yeah. What letter?
Oh.
165.
I think it's H.
South of Second Road to 11th, 12th, and 13th Street,
On
the
what page
adjustment.
do you on right now?
65.
Yeah, it would be H.
All right, that's Second Road up there, right? It's going across a quarter.
Yeah, I think so.
Intersection should be 12th and 2nd.
I think when we're done this section, we'll call it a night.
Is that Second Road or First Road?
Hold on, I'll tell you in a sec.
I thought he said it was second road. I don't know.
I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think it's second.
No, not that big expression, right?
I'm gonna tell you in a second.
Because I think that's what the one,
What's that, I'm sorry?
I think the building up on the one.
Oh.
First one, yeah. What is it? How big it is?
511. Done.
So those are all residential lots, right? Going all the way down that road. So by doing that, you're providing
You know
a
that
residential
better
lot
than I do.
of adequate size, and you're giving back to the kid.
Yes.
Anything flat.
First.
Because that's all, everything that's in the AP
Yes,
now,
question, anything flat.
that's all farmland now.
If they sold their Pineland development back to somebody's farm, does that show up
Yeah,
in this
but
map
you
at all?
don't
that we
have
know?
quite a way.
No, I would have no,
Yeah,
I would have
so
no
lot
way of
itself
knowing.
runs
So you could be going over
Far
a
south.
piece of land saying, well, we're gonna move it in and the development
Red
credit could be
line.
gone off of it already. So you'd have to
Carve
move the
that
lines
out.
off.
It's possible.
Right.
Yeah, I would have no way of knowing.
Okay,
It's-
it's just, it dawned on me about, you know,
You're taking away future development.
It's a good point. I don't know.
some of it might be, well,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
locked up anyway.
Right.
So we'll-
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
If we would know that.
We'll circle this too.
I don't know, I don't,
So that's why I asked which one.
I don't know how I
So-
would find out.
So going back to the
Is that
streets-
second road?
First,
First
That's
road,
first
yeah.
road.
That,
So then-
that may
Well,
be,
second one's on top though, right?
Second one would be down low, that's first.
that,
That's right, okay.
is that developed into grapes, do you know? I think I know where that may be. I think I know where that may be on First Road.
But that is an H then. Because H says south of Second Road.
well,
Well,
first is south of second.
right.
I'm trying to find out.
But I still think that's right, right? Because it's south of Second Road. No?
It's south of Chew Road.
Okay, it's 13th.
No, Second is south of First, sorry.
Not if you turn the map upside down.
South of Chip.
Pardon?
Yes, even if you turn the map upside down, because the north arrow is what controls that. Just these damn engineers put north in any old direction they want.
North is up on this map.
I know that. And so if that's what's the road that goes across,
On an angle?
no, that's Chew Road.
This is Chew.
Right.
This, so this frontage
It's First.
First.
is first.
First.
Correct.
So then where is that, which bullet point is that on page 165?
I'm trying to figure that out. Okay, so this is 13th.
Uh-huh, it's G.
G? Right. Correct.
And we have questions about that one then, too.
Yep, that's another one we're circling.
So what is the recommendation for this recommendation here?
On the other side of that, Stu, heading more towards Winslow, the direction of Winslow, those other bowling alley lots?
You talking about this
Oh, yes.
series of them?
Why did you not include that in the recommendation change?
I think we took it off the aerial and we saw what was farmed.
So in other words, when you look at the aerial, if it looked like it was farmland to begin with, you turned it in and wanted to make it AP, for the
Correct.
most part. But if it
Except
looked like.
Yes.
Except in that includes the forested part.
Okay,
Well, we had to get there.
I understand.
We couldn't just spot zone
Right. Okay.
that ag portion.
Well, we've been here 2 hours. Do we want to call it a night and move on to the next time and?
Well, we still have, I mean, I would guess, because I get up early in the morning and I'm fading fast.
Okay.
But I was wondering, H and I, we haven't
Well,
done.
let me do this. I think we're pretty close to finishing this zone,
That's fine.
so let's do that. But can I get a recommendation for what we're doing, what you want to do here?
Do we think we feel the same way, not to add?
I don't.
How does everybody else feel about that?
Don't want to add it.
So we all kind of feel the same way?
Yeah.
I agree with the recommendation.
You
I
agree with the?
agree with the recommendation.
Okay.
I think it makes sense in these particular areas where we're showing the aerial, comparing it to what's actually going to be developed there versus not. I actually agree with what Stuart has drawn in blue.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm sure that was our thinking when we did this,
What's that?
because we were looking at the uses.
I know.
Well, I understand what you're saying. You're looking at the usage,
And
but then he's thinking about future.
But when you look at that bowling alley,
Yeah, I
it's hard to believe that that's going to suddenly get developed.
See, I have less of a problem with this one, as far as the development of it.
But
You think
it's
it's-
not narrow, you know, it is 17 acres.
Right,
With
but
two-
it's,
That's
What
not
it
narrow
then for?
for a bowling alley.
I think we're
let's
gonna
leave
have
it
to
as an
bring
open
up.
issue.
You know,
Leave it as an open issue.
Yeah. Okay. As we continue running west, my recollection, and let me just make sure I'm right.
That's the Jedi.
Is to generally follow lot lines where we can
Mhm.
for here.
Put another home, that's what's going to be developed.
As we move north,
Bring in new infrastructure.
here is just something that got, we went round and round
I
on this.
remember this discussion.
You remember?
Yes.
Right? You're putting it- Doesn't make sense. In my opinion. You want to be as close to existing infrastructure as possible. unless you're-
Okay, so right now, current zoning runs up to this area, and this is, trying to find, I think, is this the 15th Street, Doc?
15th Street is immediately to your, my right, that street. What you're looking at is it Blue Anchor there, not Blue Anchor,
Rosedale.
Rosedale.
where 15th comes into Egg Harbor Road and.
That's Rainier Avenue.
and June.
Rainier, okay, right,
That's Rainier.
Rainier, okay. So this is E. Yeah, to the western municipal lot line to, reflect existing uses. So we dropped the AP line here, and we're recommending that this land be, bear with me a second.
It's RR, right?
I think so, but I wanna. RR.
Yep.
Oh, it's that finger.
Yeah.
I don't see that being an issue. Anybody have an issue with that?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
The only issue I would have with that, it makes perfect sense. But you are telling the Pinelands, you want to put this into the Pinelands town, and they're going to say, well, where are you going to take some of the Pinelands town and put it into the AP? Or some
It's
other.
the area that we've been trying to do, and you've been pushing back on me the whole night.
See, that's why I don't like to mess with the Pinelands town as much as possible. Once you give it away, you're never going to get it back.
But what's
Put that back.
realistic?
Put that in a letter to the committee.
So, what is the
That's
consensus
fine.
of the
I
group?
have no problem with it.
I think this makes, I really do think this
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think we're in
I
favor
don't know,
of
how
doing
was that
this.
zoning line determined in the first place? It doesn't look like anything.
You.
Let me, hold on one second. I will turn off the line, and we'll see if we can actually come up with an answer for you. Yeah, I have no idea. See, you know, not you, I'm just saying, the generic Santa Pinelands.
Right.
How'd you come up with these, you know, unless you could tell me how you came up with these in the first place, you can't argue that it has to stay there. That's my philosophy.
Is it possible that it's an extension on the other, who's the next town over? Is that Winslow?
I think so.
I mean, could it be?
It's not a stream or it's
There's
not
nothing there.
any natural feature?
Well, it looks
No,
like,
that they
it looks like they
decided-
just gave them just free acres that nothing was ever gonna happen to.
Right.
But that, at the end, those are our lots on the right-hand side, right?
Yes.
I mean, they're part of Hammonton.
Yes.
So we're correcting it, period. It doesn't matter what's happening in Winslow.
But I was wondering if that's what Pinelands was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could it have been a wetlands buffer at one time?
All right. So we are now through to the end of
Maybe it went
page,
there.
You don't see a stream.
essentially 168, and we'll pick up at the AP CLI
Okay.
zone on 169.
On 168, can you just explain how someone would go about, where they're trying to prove they had 10 acres, I guess, in old history?
Yeah, this was something that came up not too long ago, and there are old deeds that the way that the properties were measured back in the day, and when I say back in the day, like Bonnie and Clyde times, were to the center line of roads that were just platted but not built. So then the roads get built, the convention changed in surveying, the surveying world, and you're dealing with now to the curb line. So they would have to get us some measure of, whether it's a deed or some kind of survey or deed or documentation, that's the word I'm looking for, to prove what they had then.
Open it up to the public if anybody wants to be heard. Okay, seeing none. Anything for the good of the order? Our next meeting that we have is our regular meeting, which is going to be next Wednesday, the 21st. After that, we will have a meeting on the 6th, but I think our next meeting for this is on the 13th.
Wait a minute, okay.
So our regular planning board meeting, our joint board meeting is the 21st. We have a couple discussions, a couple applications coming in, followed by the 6th of March, and the special meeting on the 13th of March, which is another Wednesday.
No, that's an environmental commission meeting that day.
Then that's not that day. We'll talk about that
It's
at
the
our next
12th.
meeting.
It's
It's the 12th. Maybe- Yeah, no, it's the Tuesday, that's right, it's the 12th.
Yeah, because I would, I'm gonna complain if you do it.
I know, okay, I won't do that. I did it once already, and I won't do it
And I
again.
did complain about it.
I know.
A lot.
All right. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn.
I wanna know
Thank
what zone
you.
that is.